if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Here is my story. Around the time my wife cheated, we had been married for around 15 years. We met in college, got married, and started having kids a few years later. I never thought anything was wrong, which I am sure some people roll their eyes at, but I mean, things seemed fine. We got up in the morning together, had breakfast with the family, and then went about our day until coming home in the evening. Then we had dinner and spent some time together as a family. Our intimacy hadn't changed at all. Sure, it was nowhere near the level when we first got married, but it still was pretty good for a couple who had been married as long as we had. I think if my wife had shown some signs, it would have been a lot easier to digest, but she didn't. Even after all these years, I still can't see any signs. Maybe she had put up a mask for me that was so good I was unable to see through it. The only reason I even realized something was going on was because of my kids. They happened to see mommy kissing her friend while I was at work one day. All of the kids were under the age of 10, so it was really difficult for them to see it. When I got home, they innocently asked me what was going on. I can't tell you how hard it was to keep up a facade for my kids, but I did. My response was to smile at them and tell them I'd talk with their mother that night. I did just that. My wife was taken aback. She said the kids were mistaken and she was just giving her friend from work a hug. He had dropped something off for her, is what she claimed. It's crazy how genuine my wife sounded. I almost wanted to believe her, but I knew my kids wouldn't make something like that up. Plus, it wasn't easy to confuse a kiss with a hug. However, I let my wife think that I believed her and decided to go old school. I hired a PI to find her. We had the money, so I figured it was a good way to make use of it to get proof. Within 2 weeks, I had my evidence and presented it to my wife. She didn't have much to say. All she did was cry and cry, going on about how the coworker she was seeing was her soulmate. It wasn't planned, of course, it just happened. At that moment, I knew my marriage was over. There was just no way I could stay in a marriage with a woman who cheated on me, called my kids liars, and tried to make it out as if they were the bad ones. If I hadn't hired a PI, she probably never would have even told me the truth. I had to start the divorce process. She did beg me to stay, but eventually slinked off to go be with her AP. We had an amicable divorce and custody agreement. It was split custody, but the older the kids got, the less they wanted to go over. They understood what their mother did once they were old enough. Never did I say anything to them about it or talk bad about their mother because, in the end, she was their mother after all. When they did get older, I tried my best to answer their questions to the best of my ability. It got to the point where my kids didn't even want to spend time with their mother anymore. She did take me to court, but by this point, they were of age where they could choose if they wanted to go over or not. They didn't, so the judge said it was out of her hands. If my kids wanted to stay with me full-time and not visit their mother, then so be it. My ex was not happy with this and blasted me over social media, as one does, but I ignored it because it was beneath me to pay any attention to it. By this point, my ex had remarried to her AP and had a kid with him. This was probably another reason why our kids didn't want to go over there anymore. It felt to them like they were being replaced. At least, this was what I suspected to be the case. Up until our kids turned 18. My ex tried her best to get them to come see her, but it was to no avail. Once they went away to college, she couldn't use any more legal means to try to force them to see her, even though it didn't work anyway because the judge wouldn't force it. The years passed. My kids graduated college, got married, and had kids of their own. I was thrilled to become a grandfather for the first time. It truly is different from being a parent and gives you a great opportunity to spoil them rotten. At some point, my wife stopped trying to get into contact with our kids but started up again after her husband died. She only had one kid now with the deceased husband, but they weren't planning on having kids anytime soon. Her only chance at having grandkids was to be around the ones we shared. However, our kids still wanted nothing to do with her. I don't know if my ex-wife wanted to brag about it on social media or wanted a relationship with her grandkids because she genuinely wanted it. Whatever the reason, my kids didn't want to spend time with her or have her see their children. This was their right. She kept trying, even going so far as to constantly message them on social media and try to see if they would rekindle a relationship with her. If she had left things well enough alone and at least apologized, which she never did, I might add, it might have worked in her favor. But my ex was never great at thinking that far ahead, so she's missed out on a lot of special moments with our grandkids. I remarried myself a few years ago, and my second wife has become more of a grandmother to my grandkids than their biological grandmother ever has been. They barely even know of her existence. She's now quite lonely because after news of her affair came out, my ex lost a lot of her friends and even some of her family members. They turned against her because they didn't like what my ex had done to me. We never had any issues with each other and still reached out to me now and then. I wasn't as close to them as I once was, but we continued to talk to each other a few times a year. While I have a rich family life, my ex is now a bitter and lonely widow from what I have heard. Even her child with her deceased husband isn't very close to her. They have distanced themselves from my ex for some reason. I didn't care to know why, but I could come up with a few reasons why they would do that. Had my wife not stepped outside our marriage, she wouldn't be facing her golden years alone and with no kids or grandkids to share it with. I didn't have an ounce of pity for her because she made her bed, and she was going to have to continue to lay in it until she took her last breath. When you hear about cheating spouses, you rarely get a glimpse into how it can have an impact on their life even decades later. This is a perfect example of this. Your wife truly did have it all: a great spouse, kids, family, and friends. She threw it all away because she believed she had found her soulmate. There were so many other ways she could have done it, but instead, she chose to take the easy way out and cheat on you. Amazingly, she was willing to go so far as to blame the kids and brand them as liars. Based on this alone, it's no wonder that your kids want nothing more to do with your ex. The same goes for allowing their children to be around her as well. She could have tried to make amends in some way, but it seems like your ex just kept digging her heels in. Continue to enjoy your life with your new wife, kids, and grandkids. Let your ex continue to be a bitter, angry person. Now, let's move on to the second story. I was married to my ex-wife for 10 years. The two of us got married straight out of high school. People warned us against it, telling us it was way too soon and we should just wait, finish college first, start a career, and then see where we were at. It was what they wanted us to do. Me being a fool in love meant that I didn't care what any of them had to say. We had been dating since sophomore year of high school, so I thought I knew everything and found my forever person. My wife at the time seemed to be on the same page, so we got married and went to the same college. The two of us lived in married coupled housing, which was helpful for us. Even though we were busy with college, I felt that our marriage was at its strongest in college. After we graduated, we got our apartment and jobs in our chosen fields. Things from there still seemed great. Slowly, we were building our future. The people who had been against us in the beginning and warned us against marriage were wrong. They had since come to support us. Her family was like my second family, so after marrying her, I did gain a lot more family members. It was about a year and a half before our 10th anniversary when I noticed something was going on with my wife. She was more distant and didn't want me to ever touch her. I attributed it to me working a lot lately and just being very busy. I decided to make it up to her by planning a romantic night. She ended up not coming home that night and used the excuse that she was staying with a friend. Like I said, I had no reason not to believe or trust her, so I assumed she was telling the truth. The closer we got to our 10th anniversary, the more it continued. My wife was even more indifferent to me than ever and was hardly home. It was at this point I realized the chances of her having an affair were high, so I used one of those Apple AirTags. I was ashamed to use it, but I had to find out. Instead of going to a friend's house like she said, she was across town in the opposite direction. I drove there and waited for her to come out. She did come out arm in arm with some heavily tattooed and pierced guy. Compared to my straight-laced self who always played by the rules, it was quite a shock. I took a video and quietly drove home. When she got home, I didn't say anything and just played the video for her. After the shock wore off, she started yelling at me for planting an AirTag in her car and following her. It was creepy, apparently. The logic she was spewing was just very hard to follow. I just waited until she quieted and asked why. My wife claimed she needed someone more exciting and not as boring as I was. Working hard to provide a good life for us wasn't what she wanted. I pointed out that by working so much, I was able to help us afford our nice house, car, etc., but my wife just told me she wanted more. If what she wanted was something more, then I was fine with that. True to her word, my wife wanted out as quickly as possible. With me being the breadwinner, she could have gotten a lot of money and spousal support out of me. However, she seemed more focused on the ink being dry on the divorce papers than anything else. She wanted so badly to be with her precious AP, who was her true soulmate. I was just a stop along the way to finding him. Her words, and not mine. If that's what she wanted, then fine. The agreement ended up with me getting the house, dog, and more than half the money in the joint account. I was shocked that all she wanted was the car to be paid off completely and no alimony. I guess my ex wanted a complete break from me, which was why she agreed to such a clean split. Did it hurt? Yeah, of course, it did. But if that was how she wanted it, then so be it. It was probably better for me as well to get a clean break. From the day our divorce was final, I had no contact with her because I saw no reason why I should continue to have her in my life. However, we did have mutual friends, and I still kept in contact with some of her family members, so I was still privy to certain things that were going on in her life. The AP, or the new love of her life, was gone within a year of the divorce. He dumped her for someone else, which sent her into a tailspin since she had been staying at his place. It left her with no place to go. My ex couldn't go back to her parents because they had disowned her pretty much and still talk to me to this day. Last I heard, my ex-wife had been living in a small apartment with her sister and the new love of her life. She's working 2 jobs to make ends meet and is in debt. Had she pushed for more during our divorce, then she would have had more money as well as alimony to fall back on. I mean, I wasn't complaining, but if she had been thinking with her head instead of her heart, she would have been better off. To make it weirder, her new boyfriend has the same name as me. I'm not sure how to feel about that, so I choose not to think of it very often or at all. It just seems a little taboo to date someone with the same name as your ex. Like, you wouldn't date someone that had the same or similar name of a family member. So why with the same name as your ex-husband? It just didn't make sense to me. But when it came to my ex, there were a lot of things I didn't understand and would probably never understand either. She was my past anyway, so I didn't need to worry myself sick. When it comes to my ex-wife, it's been a few years since our divorce, and while my ex's life has been a downward spiral, mine has been great. I got remarried about 3 years ago, and the 2 of us are currently having our first child. Trusting another woman was difficult for me, so it took me a while to even think about dating again. My now wife was very patient, however, and was willing to wait for me as long as she needed eventually. I felt ready to date again, and it led to a second marriage. I have even reached a new level of success. My wife and I managed to sell the old house I had with my ex, buying a bigger one, and even have savings to spare. Both of us had lucrative careers, though my wife planned to go on maternity leave once the baby was born. If my ex knew about my new life, then she has yet to reach out to me. I doubt she ever will, which suits me fine. There is no need for her to ever speak again, but sometimes I do wonder if she regrets having an affair and hurrying through a divorce so she could be with her AP. Chances are my ex regrets it, but what comes around goes around. For my ex, truer words had never been spoken. Opus, I love my reaction, the same you use at the end of your post because it is so true. What comes around will go around. It might seem like the person who hurt you has it all and will never face consequences for their actions, but they will one day. It might be a subtle consequence, or, in the case of your ex-wife, the consequences are big and have a lasting impact on their financial future. It's so great that she didn't try to push you for alimony or strap you for cash after your divorce. I have heard that this happens to a lot of divorced men, so I'm glad she was naive about it for your financial sake. Congratulations to you and your new wife, as well as your unborn baby. This gives others hope that there are other fish in the sea and happiness can be found again. It's not very easy, but it is possible. If you liked it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story. Thank you for being here with us.